Our home, a cozy little place along the Santa Barbara coast, had big windows that let in tons of sunlight and the calming sound of waves rolling in all day long. Mark's job kept him on the road a lot, and though the house felt a bit lonely without him, I always cheered him on because I knew how much his career mattered. That quiet morning, I figured I'd spruce up the place, give it a fresh, lively feel. I started in the living room, popping on some smooth jazz tunes that floated through the air, blending perfectly with the salty ocean breeze. Wearing a comfy white tee and denim shorts to move around easily, I got to work dusting the high bookshelves where Mark displayed his favorite knickknacks. Out of nowhere, I felt someone watching me. When I turned, there was Sam, Mark's son from his first marriage, slouched against the doorframe. He'd just rolled out of bed, his hair all messy, eyes still foggy with sleep. I flashed a warm smile and chirped, "Hey, Sam, good morning." His eyes stayed on me a bit too long, but he mumbled back, "Morning." He strolled in and plopped onto the couch, watching me as I kept dusting. I tried to brush it off and focus on my task, but his presence made it tough to concentrate. We started chatting about his internship ideas and the projects he was working on. I didn't notice the stool I was standing on start to wobble as I stretched to fix a picture frame on the top shelf. It tipped, and I started to fall. "Dorothy!" Sam yelled, leaping toward me. He caught me just in time, his hand steadying my waist, holding me upright in the stillness of the room. For a split second, we just stood there, eyes locked, my breath stuck in my throat. It was the closest we'd ever been physically. His hold was strong but careful, like he didn't want to scare me. I could feel the warmth of his breath, so near I sensed its steady rhythm. My pulse was racing. I let out a nervous giggle to break the tension. "Wow, Sam, thanks. That could have been a nasty tumble." He didn't say anything at first, his eyes searching mine, flickering with confusion, curiosity, and maybe something like admiration. I stepped back, tugging at my shirt to compose myself, but his gaze didn't waver. Trying to sound breezy, I asked, "Got any big plans for next weekend?" Sam gave a lazy shrug, a small smirk tugging at his lips. "Nah, probably just chilling here." I nodded, then moved to the couch, motioning for him to sit with me. I needed a second to catch my breath after that near fall. He sat down, and suddenly, the space between us felt tighter than ever. The quiet wasn't weird, though, it was peaceful, with golden sunlight pouring through the big window and the sound of waves outside. I glanced at Sam and caught his soft, steady stare. "I love mornings like this," I said quietly. "So calm, no rush." He nodded, his voice low. "Yeah, same. Especially when you've got someone to share it with." His words hit me hard, carrying more meaning than just casual chat. My heart sped up. "Dorothy," he said, still holding my gaze, "sometimes it feels like we just get each other, no words needed." The golden sunlight poured through the wide windows, warming my face and casting a soft glow across the room, but it was Sam's intense gaze that made everything else, the crashing waves, the faint jazz notes, the world beyond, fade into a distant blur. Deep down, a voice screamed that I shouldn't be feeling this pull, this reckless flutter in my chest, not for him, not like this. Yet, before I could wrestle my heart back into place, my hand moved on its own, fingers trembling as they grazed his arm, the lightest touch sparking a current that seemed to hum in the air between us. That small gesture, so simple yet so dangerous, shifted something intangible, like a match igniting a flame we couldn't control. All I could hear was the rhythm of our breaths, quick and uneven, mingling in the quiet, the weight of the moment pressing down on us like the ocean tide outside. "Sam," I whispered, my voice barely audible, my eyes locked on his, unable to break free from the pull of his steady, searching gaze. He reached out, his hand gently covering mine, his touch soft but firm, as if he were anchoring me in the storm of emotion swirling inside. In that instant, I felt the enormity of what we were on the verge of, something vast, forbidden, and life-altering, teetering on the edge of a cliff we couldn't climb back from. My mind raced, urging me to pull away, to stop before we crossed a line, but as he leaned closer, his face drawing near in the soft morning light, I didn't move. His breath, warm and steady, brushed against my skin, and it was as if the world beyond our little coastal home ceased to exist, leaving only the two of us in a bubble of sunlight and unspoken longing. As he closed the distance, the space between us dissolved completely, and the moment stretched out, timeless, like a dream I didn't want to wake from, every second heavy with possibility. His breath caressed my cheek, warm and intimate, and I closed my eyes, the sounds of the world, the waves, the distant gulls, the hum of life, melting away until there was nothing but him. When his lips finally met mine, a shiver rippled through me, electric and overwhelming, sparking every nerve in my body. The kiss was tender, almost hesitant, but it carried a depth of emotion that felt like a confession, unhurried yet charged with the certainty that we were crossing a boundary we could never uncross. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat a reminder of the wrongness of this moment, but in Sem's warmth, in the way his presence enveloped me, logic crumbled like sandcastles against the tide. I knew I was betraying everything I'd promised, to Mark, to this family, but in that fleeting, stolen moment, the connection with Sem felt like the only truth I could hold on to, a warmth that drowned out the guilt threatening to pull me under. His hand slid to my cheek, pulling me closer, his heartbeat racing against mine. "Dorothy," he whispered, my name shaky on his lips. I touched his shoulder, feeling his strength as his breathing quickened. His arms wrapped around me, firm but tender, like he was shielding me from everything outside. The soft light and his warmth wrapped us up together. My fingers grazed his cheek, feeling its warmth. His eyes held a raw honesty and longing, his grip tightening just a bit. We'd crossed a boundary, and we both felt it. He kissed me again, deeper, more desperate, breaking down every wall I'd put up. My hands shook as I ran them through his hair, emotions flooding me. The waves outside kept their steady beat, a reminder of the world beyond, but all I knew was his breath, his heartbeat, and a closeness that felt endless. I kept telling myself to step back, to break free from this dangerous pull, but my heart refused to listen, tethered to Sem in a way that defied reason. His breath, warm and soft against my ear, sent shivers down my spine as he whispered, "Dorothy, I'm lost here. You're in my thoughts every moment, and I don't know how to stop it." My fingers found his cheek, trembling as I traced its warmth, and in his eyes, I saw the same unspoken turmoil mirrored back at me, longing, guilt, and a connection we couldn't deny. This forbidden attraction had swept us far beyond the delicate boundary we'd meant to respect, leaving me terrified of the consequences yet utterly enveloped in the safety of his embrace, where the world's judgments couldn't reach us. His lips grazed my temple, soft as a whisper, then drifted to my cheek, where a bead of sweat glistened under the morning sunlight streaming through the wide windows. My body trembled, not from fear but from a raw, aching desire that felt both thrilling and wrong, stirring a fire I hadn't known I could feel. His fingers wove gently through my hair, tugging me closer with a tenderness that soothed and urged all at once, each touch a silent promise and a plea. His young eyes, brimming with sincerity, held a piercing honesty that cut through my defenses, raw and unyielding. "Dorothy," he said, his voice breaking with a desperate edge, almost pleading, "please, don't look away from me." I didn't know what path I was choosing, caught in a tide that pulled me under, beyond my control, as if the universe itself had conspired to bind us in this moment. My heart surged forward, reckless, ignoring the consequences that loomed like shadows in my mind, urging me to lean into him despite everything I stood to lose. His breath brushed my neck, warm and steady, mingling with the faint rhythm of his heartbeat, lulling me into a dreamlike state where nothing else existed, not Mark, not the family, just us. Yet, a quiet voice in the back of my mind whispered, sharp and insistent, "You've crossed a line you can't undo." But I couldn't pull away, not when Sem's warmth wrapped around me like a cocoon, letting me forget the weight of guilt, the life waiting outside, and the promises I'd made. "I never thought something like this could happen," Sem murmured, his voice low, his eyes flickering with a blend of uncertainty and quiet joy that I hadn't turned him away, as if he'd feared I'd shatter the fragile moment we'd built. "I don't want to let go of you, of this feeling we've stumbled into, it's too real, too much." His words sank into me, sharp and heavy, tugging at the deepest parts of my heart, stirring emotions I'd buried long ago. I knew I should break free, step back into the safety of the life I'd chosen, but my hand stayed clasped in his, unwilling to let go of the warmth that felt like home in a way I couldn't explain. Our breaths intertwined, rapid yet strangely harmonious, as the distant sound of waves crashing outside wove a spell around us, pulling us deeper into a haze that felt detached from reality, like a dream we could linger in forever, far from the world's rules and expectations. I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling both safe and scared out of my mind. The world around us seemed to melt away, like a curtain pulled back to reveal a different reality. I wasn't sure if I was awake or caught in a dream. The line between right and wrong had vanished like morning fog. Then, a sharp noise broke the quiet, the front door creaked open, and a familiar voice rang through the house. "Dorothy, I'm back." It was like waking up from a deep sleep. Sam and I snapped out of the bubble we'd fallen into. My heart froze. His eyes widened with panic, but he let go of me right away. Still, his gaze held something unspoken, something we couldn't put into words. My pulse pounded, my hands trembling slightly. The air felt heavy as Mark walked in, his face glowing with a happy grin, completely unaware of the chaos inside me. "Dorothy?" His voice was warm, like it always was when he came home from a trip. I took a shaky breath, forcing my voice to sound steady. "Right here," I called, stepping out of the living room with a smile that felt forced but hopefully looked normal, my hands still shaky. Mark crossed the room with his familiar, easy stride, wrapping me in a warm, comforting embrace that smelled faintly of his cologne and the crisp air of travel, then pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead, a gesture that usually grounded me but now felt like a weight. "I missed you more than you know," he said, his voice brimming with the genuine affection that had always defined our life together, completely unaware of the heavy tension that cloaked the house like a brewing storm, thick and suffocating. I risked a fleeting glance at Sam, who lingered a few steps away in the sunlit living room, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, likely to conceal the trembling I knew was there from the way his shoulders tensed. Our eyes locked for a brief, heart-stopping moment, and in his gaze, I saw a raw ache, a tangled mess of guilt for what we'd done and a stubborn longing that refused to fade, mirroring the turmoil churning inside me. "Hey, Sam, there you are, kid," Mark called out, his face lighting up with a broad, proud smile as he noticed his son, his voice warm with the joy of being home. "Come over here and give your dad a proper hello." Sam drew a slow, steadying breath, as if gathering every ounce of strength to mask the storm of emotions beneath his calm exterior, then stepped forward with a smile that flickered but didn't quite reach his eyes, a fragile mask that threatened to crack under the weight of our shared secret. "How was the trip, Dad?" he asked, his voice carefully even, though I caught the slight strain in it, a subtle hint of the effort it took to play the part of the carefree son. "It was fantastic," Mark replied, his grin wide and infectious as he clapped Sam on the shoulder with a hearty, fatherly enthusiasm, his eyes sparkling with the success of his trip. "Everything went off without a hitch, better than I could have hoped, honestly, and I even picked up a couple of gifts for you two to celebrate." The word gifts landed like a blow to my chest, sharp and jarring, a stark reminder of the two worlds I was painfully straddling, Mark's unwavering, dependable love, the foundation of the life we'd built together, and the reckless, forbidden emotions that had surged between Sam and me, pulling me into a dangerous current I hadn't meant to enter. As Mark dove into a string of amusing tales from his San Francisco trip, his face glowing with the kind of contagious excitement that usually drew me in, my mind wandered, barely catching the words spilling from his lips. My thoughts kept spiraling back to that stolen moment with Sam, when his gaze had pierced through me, making me feel truly noticed, desired in a way that had caught me off guard and rekindled a spark I hadn't realized had dimmed. Sam stood just behind his father, silent in the sun-dappled living room, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that felt like a silent conversation, as if he were pouring every unspoken word and feeling into that single, unwavering look. I tore my gaze away, my heart racing with panic that Mark might catch the flicker of something wrong, that he'd sense the invisible thread of tension tying me to Sam, threatening to unravel everything. "I'll make us some coffee, you must be exhausted after your trip," I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle on my lips as I turned toward the kitchen, grateful for an excuse to escape the suffocating quiet that hung between us like a held breath. The moment the kitchen door clicked shut behind me, I spun to face Sam, my voice hushed and trembling, barely holding steady under the weight of what I needed to say. "Sam, we have to put an end to this, now." He took a step closer, his eyes brimming with a raw, aching pain that mirrored my own turmoil. But these feelings, Dorothy, he faltered, his throat tightening as he searched for words to capture the storm raging inside him, his voice catching on the edge of desperation. Sam, we can't let this go on, I said, my hands clenching tightly together, nails digging into my palms as I summoned every shred of resolve I could muster. This family, it's everything to me, to us. He fell silent, his gaze heavy with sorrow, like a weight pressing down on both of us. He gave a slow, reluctant nod, but the air between us hummed with the truth we couldn't ignore. What had happened was etched into our souls, impossible to erase. Mark pushed through the door then, carrying 2 steaming coffee mugs, his smile as warm and oblivious as ever, lighting up the room like the morning sun outside. You two look like you're hashing out the world's problems in here, he teased, his tone light and playful. Nothing big went down while I was gone, right? I let out a shaky chuckle, praying it sounded light and carefree enough to pass as genuine, though my chest tightened with the effort to hide the storm inside. Oh, just catching up, I said, my voice a touch too bright as I reached for the steaming coffee mug Mark held out, the warmth of the ceramic doing little to steady my trembling hands. Sam managed a faint smile, but it was a fragile thing, barely masking the worry and guilt that swirled in his eyes like clouds over the ocean outside, betraying the weight of our shared secret. He turned toward the wide window, where the Pacific stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun, his gaze distant as if he were searching for some way to outrun the heavy burden of what we'd done, the wave's steady rhythm a mocking reminder of the world moving on without us. Settling beside Mark on the couch, his familiar warmth, once a source of unshakable comfort, felt distant, as if an invisible fracture had crept into the foundation of our life together, one I wasn't sure I could ever mend. In the days that followed, a quiet, oppressive heaviness settled over the house, like a fog that clung to every corner, impossible to shake. I threw myself into keeping things normal, scrubbing the kitchen counters until they gleamed, stirring pots of chili with Mark while forcing smiles, asking about his latest projects at work, but each moment felt like a performance, a desperate attempt to hold together a life that was slipping through my fingers. Sam's glances trailed me in fleeting moments, when we brushed past each other in the narrow hallway, his shoulder grazing mine, or when I caught him watching from the porch as I hung laundry, each look a silent echo of what we couldn't say. When Mark was near, Sam kept his eyes averted, his face carefully neutral, but in those stolen seconds when we were alone, the air between us crackled with unspoken tension, every glance heavy with the memory of our transgression. One afternoon, with Mark off at a sports bar cheering on his team with friends, I knelt in the backyard, tending to the rose bushes that lined the fence, their petals vibrant against the green but unable to lift the weight of the thoughts that pressed down on me. The late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the grass, but its warmth barely registered, my mind too tangled in guilt and longing to notice the beauty around me. I heard the soft crunch of footsteps on the path behind me, and my heart stuttered, knowing without turning that it was Sam, his presence as unmistakable as the ocean's pull. Later, in a quieter moment, I found myself sitting across from him at the kitchen table, the house still except for the distant hum of waves beyond the windows. Sam, I said, my voice calm but laced with a gentle firmness, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles whitened, a desperate attempt to steady the tremor running through me. We can't keep walking this road, it's tearing us apart, and it's not fair to anyone. He gave a slow nod, his eyes weighed down with sadness. I get it, but how do we just pretend none of it ever happened? My heart clenched painfully, a sharp twist of guilt and sorrow, but I locked eyes with Sam, holding his gaze with a steady resolve that belied the storm raging inside me, determined to anchor us both in what had to be said. We can't undo the choices we made, Sam, no matter how much we might wish to, I said softly, my voice trembling yet firm, but we have the power to shape what comes next, to choose a path that doesn't tear everything apart. You've got a whole world of possibilities stretching out before you, a future bright with promise. I have a duty to this family, to Mark, to the life we've built together, and I can't turn my back on that. His shoulders sagged under the weight of my words, as if the fight had drained out of him, but he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, I've never felt anything like this before, Dorothy, this pull so strong it's like it's carved into me, but I'll do my best to let it go and move forward. His eyes, shimmering with a mix of resignation and lingering affection, held a quiet strength that made my chest ache even more. I reached out, my fingers grazing his hand with a tender, fleeting touch, a final gesture that felt like a whispered farewell, carrying all the unspoken emotions we couldn't voice. "If you can find the strength to try, Sem, then I'll dig deep and do the same," I said, my voice catching as I fought to keep it steady, the words of fragile promise to ourselves and each other. The silence that settled between us wasn't thick with tension or discomfort, it was a gentle, shared stillness, like the calm after a storm, filled with a mutual understanding that bound us in that moment. What we'd experienced wasn't a shameful error to be erased, but a raw, messy piece of our humanity, a moment of connection we hadn't meant to stumble into but couldn't fully control. Choosing to let it go didn't diminish the truth of what we'd felt, it was a testament to our growth, a quiet act of respect for each other and for the family we both cherished, a family that deserved our loyalty more than our fleeting desires. A few days later, Sem got the news he'd landed his dream internship with a big-name company in New York. At dinner, Mark was all smiles, wrapping him in a proud hug, thrilled for his son's success. I smiled too, even as a storm of feelings churned inside me. On the day Sem left, I hugged him tightly at the front door. "Take good care of yourself, Sem," I told him, my voice soft but sincere. He nodded, his eyes steady yet determined. "You do the same, Dorothy." He walked off, carrying his dreams and the weight of our shared past. As I watched his car fade down the coastal road, a bittersweet calm settled over me, like turning the last page of a chapter. Our story didn't wrap up with a tidy, happy bow, but sometimes keeping something precious means choosing to let it go. Back inside, Mark's warm, familiar voice called out from the living room. I stepped in, flashing a genuine smile. Time kept moving, and I chose to hold tight to the peace I knew I had to nurture.